Denial of attacks, I'm going to ask that we stand for a moment of silence in tribute to those who lost their lives that day and following wars on terror. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ask for a moment of silence, please. Thank you. Take your seats. All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the September 12th Village Board meeting, public meeting tonight. The first thing that we have is acceptance or modification of the agenda as presented. We have a letter here that I'd like to add as communications number 4. Can I have a motion for that?
I'll make that motion.
And a second? Second. Okay. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, the first thing on the agenda tonight is a continuation of a public hearing on local law to amend Section 5.2 of Appendix A of the Code of the Village of Goshen entitled Supplementary Regulations Applying to Non-Residential Buildings by the repeal of Section 5233, Lighting and Signage. Basically, this is a review of the village's lighting laws. We started this public hearing a number of months ago. Tonight, we are going to continue that. Before we open it up, I'm just going to turn it over to Trustee Matthews, who's taken a lead on getting some information from this, just to give an update. And then we'll go from there.
Sure. I contacted the state and I contacted Orange County Planning, and they have some signage regulations. This is primarily focused on considering the amendment of the signage law. And they have response for new signage laws that they have been looking to be implemented and are suggesting for evaluation, and yet these not received in writing. So I would respectfully suggest that we, of course, listen to the public and either hold the meeting open or awaiting the response from the county.
Sure. Okay. Very good. Any other comments before we open the public hearing? Okay, I'll ask for a motion. Move. And a second? Second. All right. Folks, this is a public hearing just regarding the local law about lighting in the village. After the items of business, that's when we'll have citizens' comments, which is probably why most of the people that are here tonight are here. But if there are any comments at this point on the lighting laws in the village, by all means, we just ask that you state your name. All right, hearing none.
If nobody else is going to say anything, I would just like to reiterate what I had previously said before, that any choice of style of lighting done by a developer really should remain a choice of style and aesthetics with the developer. And the village board, I believe, is perhaps not exceeding their authority, but certainly exceeding their role to interfere with aesthetics in a private development. If it's a question of a street with a number of different individual properties that's pre-existing, and you're going to change fixtures, that's one thing. But if you're looking for code to impose on developers, I think you're really exceeding your mandate.
Okay, and just to be clear, and I know that you already know this, but the lighting laws are already written. We're talking about analyzing the one part of it. So we're not imposing new restrictions on lighting and making it more restrictive. Just to be clear about that.
Maybe you could clarify that, because I was under the impression that you were considering voiding the code as it stood and then rewriting it.
No, the original discussion was over the way the village makes it so it needs to be historic lighting in certain areas. Right now, the genesis for this was those aren't covered by O&R to be replaced and upgraded. So the cost was falling on the village, and normally the cost would be on O&R.
Right.
So this would be, the way it was originally intended was brought up was to make it where it wouldn't be mandated that style per se that isn't covered by O&R.
Or find a way that orange or often covers a more pure.
If you go in any direction based on comment and information fact-finding.
And what I'm suggesting, just so that I'm clear, is that I don't believe that a municipal government should impose any style on a private developer.
Okay.
We know.
All right, thank you. Any further public comments on the public hearing? Okay. Hearing none, I'll ask for a motion to continue the public hearing. Do you think 2 weeks from tonight would be sufficient time?
It's hard to know. They're so distracted by the storm efforts.
Planning wasn't displaced, so they...
I don't know. 2 weeks from tonight,
You want to say
a wedding
the
for
first,
me, so I'm
right.
telling you that
Okay.
that's going to be a very difficult time for me to
First
be
public-
focused on bringing this
First
to
public meeting in
fruition.
October?
That would be fantastic.
Okay.
I would appreciate that.
No problem. What's the date on that?
October 24th.
24th. That's the first public one? Okay.
And not until then?
I understand. Okay. All right, so I'll ask for motion to continue the public hearing until October 24th. Do I hear a motion?
Motion.
Second? Second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, very good.
Thank you.
Moving on to minutes. We have minutes from the village board meeting August 22nd, 2011. Any errors or omissions? Hearing none, I'll ask for a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, communication. Dear Mayor of Goshen Village Board, the neighbors on MacDonald Street and Crescent Drive are having their 22nd annual block party on Sunday, September 18th. Rain date Sunday, September 25th from 2 to 5. We would like to block off the section of our neighborhood to ensure the safety for all. We respectfully request that a temporary barricade be put up on the corner of McNally Street and Crescent Drive, as well as the top curb of Crescent Drive. Thank you in advance for your cooperation on this matter. Chief doesn't have any problem with it. It's a repeat event. They do it annually. So, there's any comments on this?
No.
All right. I'll ask,
22 years.
yes.
22 years of doing it.
I'll ask for a motion to approve. So moved. Second?
Second.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. Very good. We have a letter of appreciation written by our Chief of Police to the Holiday Inn Express in Chester. Dear Gina, I would like to express my thanks to you and your staff for providing rooms to two of my officers during the recent state of emergency caused by Hurricane Irene. These officers had responded for duty during the state of emergency and were unable to return home due to flooding. Your generosity allowed the officers to get much-needed rest and keep them available to return to duty. I am informed that staff members Brett Carter and Nick Davino were particularly helpful and understanding of the situation, so please extend my personal thanks to them. It is a great comfort for me to know that we can rely on local businesses such as yours to support our public safety efforts during crisis. On behalf of all the members of the Village of Goshen Police Department and a grateful community of Goshen, please accept my thanks for your generosity and assistance during a critical time. Most respectfully and sincerely, Chief James Watt. The holiday helped out there, and the officers were basically stranded in the village. They were able to find a place to stay there. Alcohol beverage license renewal, 170 West Main. This doesn't require an approval by us, it's just keeping us informed. We have the letter that we added, that a young man wants to film parts of a movie here in the Village of Goshen. Dear Mayor and Village Board, my name is Lucas Mazzeri. I am an 11-year resident of the town of Goshen. I attend the New York Film Academy in Manhattan. I will be shooting my final piece this film between October 4th and October 11th. I'm looking to film at 3 locations in the Village of Goshen, the first being at Legion Park, the second at Quick Stop Deli, and the third at 68 Spring Street. The third location is my friend's house. If it's necessary to have a permit to shoot on the sidewalk in front of my friend's house, please let me know. I do not have the specific date, but we will not need more than 1 day to shoot the park and deli scenes. The scene at 68 Spring Street will be shot in 1 night. Including me, there will be a crew of approximately 10 people. Our equipment includes 2 cameras, a dolly with tracks, a jib, sound gear, and lighting gear. We will not require special parking, traffic, sanitation, public works, or law enforcement. I hope the information I've provided you is sufficient, and look forward to making this film in our beautiful village. All right, so I think that's a nice thing. A local resident wants to use our beautiful village to film the movie. It's no cost to us. So I'd like to see this approved tonight, but I'll open up to discussion.
Mr. Mayor, if I can, typically what we do, I understand that they don't believe that they're going to require any special requirements relative to parking, traffic, or law enforcement.
Approved pending police chief approval?
Yeah, we've had these in the past, and
Sure.
generally they've gone to the chief just to, at least that, so he has knowledge, so he doesn't get a call about some incident and has to send somebody out there, so.
Okay.
And the chief is always very proactive in working with folks like this to make sure that there's the event gets to happen, because it's obviously a good event, but has a minimal impact on residents of the village.
Okay.
And in that vein, usually, if we've been through this, you have to make sure that there is agreement and notification to the deli.
He's done all that because I've talked to him.
Okay, well, the chief is going to ask you to say right,
Right,
so those are notification to the neighbors as well. Because if you're laying a dolly with tracks, it means they're probably not going to have access to some area.
Okay. Well, if the board is kind enough to grant this tonight,
Sure.
I'll personally speak to the chief and make sure that he's okay with it. Any further discussion? All right, hearing none, I'll ask for a motion to approve pending the approval from the chief of police.
And notification. And notification to the neighbors. They really need to be told.
Okay, yeah, whatever the chief thinks,
Okay.
whatever is historically done, that's fine by me. I'll ask for a motion.
So,
All right, second. There are two people. First time.
Second.
All right, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. All right, we have our abstract of vouchers. Need a motion on this?
So moved.
A second? Bills examined by members of the board were approved in accordance with abstract 2011-2012, number 8, check numbers 2194 through 2259, in the amount of $378,385.98. And these are all things that have already been purchased, signed off on by village board members, and all within the budget. So, I'll ask for, actually, we have our motions. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
aye.
Okay. All right. Authorize advertisement for bid, sewer trunk line replacement project. Art, can you speak on this briefly?
Yeah, this is the trunk line in the vicinity of the Quickway and Heritage Trail, where we've got a bottleneck in our sewer system, and what we're looking to do is bypass that bottleneck with a new trunk sewer, which will run from the last manhole over to the sewage treatment plant. We're looking to go out to bid on this as soon as possible so that we can start the construction on this year and get in the ground before the weather changes. We have just a couple of loose ends to deal with as far as county DPW and parks are concerned for easements and rights-of-ways across Heritage Trail, but we've been told that the plans are acceptable, and just for some paperwork that needs to get finalized, which should happen in the near future, we want to go to bid as soon as possible. So that's what this is about.
Absolutely. All right. Any discussion on this? All right, I'll ask for a motion. So moved. A second?
Second.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Yeah.
All right, thanks. Intermunicipal agreement, Orange County for stop DWI. Something that's done every year. Ed, do you want to speak to this briefly?
We're getting, the county's providing us with a piece of equipment so that we can, free of cost to us, so that we can do more DUI enforcement detail.
Okay, that's all. So I believe it's been done in the past as well.
Yes, that's correct.
All right, I'll ask for a motion.
So moved.
I'm sorry.
Okay, first and second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right. And last item of business, Mayor Colorado, as per our discussion, I have reviewed the traffic and parking situation on Orange Avenue Parkway with DPW Superintendent Leslie. The Orange Avenue Parkway corridor has seen a marked increase in vehicular traffic due to the general increase in traffic on village roadways and the closure of Park Place entrance onto Main Street. It appears traffic that used to access South Street via Park Place now takes Orange Ave to Parkway and vice versa. With the imminent opening of BOCES at the old Arden Hill Hospital campus, it is anticipated that school bus traffic will also use this as the preferred route. The intersection of Orange Ave and Parkway is a narrow T-shaped intersection with curved lines at deep angles. This causes a sharp turn that is difficult for the trucks and larger vehicles to negotiate. Parked vehicles in the area of the T further reduce the roadway area for vehicles to negotiate this turn. Based on these observations, it is a recommendation of DPW Superintendent Leslie and myself that a no parking zone be established on the northeast side of Orange Ave, 125 feet in either direction from the center line of Parkway. If the board so desires, a board resolution, local law needs to be passed in order to be properly posted and enforced. So essentially, the chief and DPW superintendent have been reviewing this area on Orange Avenue Parkway, and trucks that come down on Parkway and make the left, if there's a car parked there in the front, it's hard to make that left. During Great American Weekend time, there's actually a truck that got stuck out there as a result of parking. So it's really just a very short distance that needs to be no parking in order to make it so that it's not a traffic safety issue anymore. So if the board's in favor of this, we would need to pass a motion to schedule a public hearing. Any discussion on this?
Well, they're going to have we could schedule a public hearing. My question is, we don't allow trucks on South, I mean, should they be allowed on Orange Avenue? But that could be something I can evaluate for the public
Yeah, if you want to
hearing.
talk to the police chief about that.
I don't have an answer yet, so.
I think it's more here because he mentions BOCES at Arden Hill. probably school buses will be the biggest concern for him.
That's something.
And, you know, trucks that utilize the track as well, the horse and stuff.
Okay.
So, any other discussion? All right, so moved. So moved, all right, do a second?
Second.
All right, so we'll schedule a public hearing. Why don't we do, should we do the, yeah, okay. So we'll do that first public hearing, public meeting in October as well. All right, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. All right, Mayor Trustee comments, Trustee Matthews?
I should start by noting number one, the passing of Margot George, with whom I've had several marvelous breakfasts and dinners over my lifetime, and I shall sorely miss her. Sorry, Don, for your loss.
Thank you.
The 9/11 tree was replaced, and that is a marvelous thing because it had died and it was paid for by the people who worked across the street. And we have another volunteer who wants to remain anonymous who also replaced the tree there. So we shall have a bevy of trees that are appropriate for the water area down there in memory of people who perished on 9/11. The storm-related damages, I would just like to say that we had a visit from the DEC, and I'm going to hand it over to Art to discuss erosion factors as a result of the storm.
Yeah, below the reservoir, we had, due to the volume of water that came over the spillway, there's been some erosion at the toe of the dam. The DEC made an inspection. Following that, they notified my office, and we in turn contacted Mike Noselis, and we went out and did a site inspection. And then following that, we retained the services of a hydrogeologist to take a look at the situation. It's a pretty bad problem. It went well beyond what's been historically happening in terms of erosion in that portion of the stream. There does not appear to be any imminent danger to the dam. However, we're awaiting the results of a study by the hydrogeologist we're expecting that to be completed this week. And we should have something for you at the work session next week.
So we'll know what we're talking about.
Okay.
But we were exceedingly responsive immediately.
Yep.
That's good. That's
Okay.
very important.
Trustee Stewart?
Well, I guess everybody's pretty well aware of what our TV people have been up to in the last couple of weeks. They've obviously been very busy, and probably not even probably, the worst flooding situation I ever remember, and I've lived here for 63 years, so it was an enormous water event, and they've been very busy.
Trustee Char?
Yeah, myself as well. Just really thanks to our DPW and our police department for all the extra effort they put in the last 2 weeks. It's quite an unbelievable storm, as we all in this room know.
Yep. Okay. Trustee Smith?
The senior center, while during the storm, was utilized by the Red Cross. They had over 50 people that stayed there overnight. So that was a benefit to, we were able to help provide that for them. I also personally, I'd like to thank all the DPW, police department, and in particular the fire department, to include Trustee Stewart, who, those people were unbelievable. They were running around like crazy, taking care of all kind of things, from pumping basements to directing traffic to, the fire department probably worked nonstop for 2.5 days straight, and, these are guys that are getting paid. They're doing it on a volunteer basis, and I'll tell you what, they did a great job, and they're superb, so that's all I got to say.
Okay. I just have two things, again, just to echo everyone else's sentiments. We had a very challenging few weeks, and I want to commend all the staff members and the other emergency responders for the acts of heroism and tireless work during both storms. Now we're in this time where rebuilding starts, and we really need to remember those that were impacted by supporting them, whether it's residences and businesses, both. We have to keep those people in mind and do what we can to support them. And I see a number of people tonight, so I'm sure we'll be hearing about some specific situations, and hopefully we can, help those that we can. And just for public information purposes, starting tomorrow, FEMA is going to be opening a center in Orange County at the Fire Training Center in New Hampton, off of 17M. I believe they open at 9, but it could be as early as 8. So we'll have more information with that as that information comes out. FEMA also approved municipal aid for municipalities, but they haven't put anything in motion for that yet. But as I find information, I'll let the public know, the board know, and we'll be working with our department heads to recoup the funds of the challenges that we faced during that time. Just one other thing before we move into citizens' comments. We had a few weeks ago, a grant writer came and spoke to the village board about ways that the village can secure grant money, whether it's for infrastructure or all sorts of improvements, parks. I reached out to a few other companies that do grant writing, and I haven't got much of a response yet. We had in the paper, Jerry was kind enough to put in that we're looking for grant writers. I haven't gotten any solicitations from grant writers. I feel that we're at a point with the challenges that we face with different deadlines coming up, and now, because of the urgency with whether it's FEMA money or other recovery funds, that we really need to begin to navigate the grant round, which we've done so far, but I think it's time to bring in a professional that we can do this and really generate some revenue for the village, because we need revenue for many infrastructure issues. So tonight I'm going to ask for a discussion to see if the village would be in favor of approving the proposal from the LaBerge Group that we had discussed at the one meeting. We don't have to do it tonight, there's time, but there's no new information, at least has been presented to me, that would change anything that I've said. And I think it's time that we're really move in a direction to be aggressive about grants. But I'll open any trustees' comments or questions.
I thought his presentation was very impressive. His credentials are excellent. I'm in favor of the mayor's proposal to go ahead.
Okay. My only question is about the specific finances. You know, I'm not clear on it.
Well, there's multiple stages. You know,
I know.
There's the specific grant writing for specific grants.
Right.
We're not at a point where we have specific grants in front of us that we could approve them writing or not. So I wouldn't want to approve any of that tonight, because there's also a lot of things that we can do on our own that we don't need to pay someone for.
So you're looking for a conceptual approval, not anything specific where we have a finite number?
I think I'd like to approve their original proposal to come in and kind of brief us on what they have to offer with regard to, you know, whether it's police, DPW, water, sewer, and all that. Not making a long-term commitment, but just doing the initial inventory. Maybe tonight, instead of approving the full amount, we could approve a fraction of it to start that conversation. But again, I'm just one person, and we do not have to. I don't want to put any pressure on anyone.
I mean, what did you say for that assessment? 4,000, I think?
About 4,500 for the inventory assessment for needs. But there's wiggle room there, because if we take on certain parts of that, then we can bring the cost down, which I think is
not to exceed 4,000, but we'll try to do a line share of it in-house.
Okay.
It's half, start the assessment, start the plans.
Is that a motion?
Ask him to tweak it.
If you make that a motion, I'll second.
So moved.
Second.
Trustee Smith.
I just think that I agree with you that we have to, if this is something we're going to pursue, that we have to get bid for it. We have to get the ball rolling. And so, yeah.
The reality of grants is they go to the people that are hungriest and work the hardest, so we really need to get out in front of it and start this process.
So we're not going to get anything without doing it.
Correct.
So, right.
So,
I support the concept.
okay.
My only question is how much we can pare it down, because I think we really do have a lot of the information, and I wouldn't want to see duplication.
Right, exactly.
So I need the money for the next step, so I don't want to waste it on anything that we can provide them with.
Right, that's why I think Trustee Char's suggestion is a good one, that we make the ceiling 4,000, but we'll work and negotiate to bring it less than by doing certain things in-house.
Yeah, I know what parts we can do in-house, bring that in-house.
Okay. All right, well, we have a first and a second. I'll ask, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience. At this point, it's time for citizens' comments. Just ask that we'd like to speak, you identify yourself with your name and residence. And at this point, we're open for citizen comments or questions. Sure, by all means.
Evening.
Good evening.
My name is Gary Stellano. I live at 32 Old Minnesota Trail in the town of Goshen. I also own the parcel 34 as well. Unfortunately, not all of us are happy with the Department of Public Works in the village. We had a little problem 2 weeks ago. The village had cut through Minnesota Trail and placed a 12-inch culvert pipe to handle the flooding storm water that with untreated water directly on my front property, okay? Now, I live in the town of Goshen. This water is coming from the village of Goshen.
Spewing into our property from the village storm drain.
There's no catch basin, sewer system, or drain to direct or filter this water. I will show you pictures of what I'm speaking of. This is the pipe they had put onto my property.
There's no existing pipe. There's not been a pipe onto our property for more than 12 years. And when I called Mike Nuzzles, he told me he was replacing an existing pipe. There was no pipe on my property. It is illegal to put, if that was existing and there was a pipe showing on my property, then it can be replaced. If there was no pipe showing, and I have village, now sewer and stormwater draining onto my property, it's illegal what was done.
First of all, I consider trespassing on the village's part because you do not own that side of the road. That side of the road is the town, not the village. So you took it upon yourself to run this pipe on a private parcel property because you have a drainage problem on your side of the property. My side of the property is not your answer to your problem.
The water is not just coming from Pine Tree Lane, it's coming from Glen Drive, North Church Street, Jackson Lane. All of the village is now draining into my wetlands
Which is toxins, road oil, gas, debris, animal waste, carcasses, anything that's on that street. If the guy in the cul-de-sac across the street decides to wash his car, that water is going on my property.
How was that approved for the Department of Public Works to do that? How did that get approved?
Now you're in danger.
I don't want to interrupt you guys if you want to.
But I want to ask that question. How was that approved to run a
Put
pipe?
in a week and a half ago.
Right.
Sure. Well, I've spoken to Superintendent Nuzzles because I know either you guys or one of your neighbors sent a communication over to us as well. And what he said, what our engineer has confirmed, is that there actually was a pipe there prior. Non-working pipe for the last 15 years.
Right. If it's non-existing, you
Now,
cannot replace it.
when you approved all these buildings, all this new building that went on, you should have looked at that situation
That should have
then.
been reviewed then when that subdivision went in.
That's correct.
Can you speak to being existing, not existing?
Yeah, there was a pipe there. There was a
And
pipe
how big
there.
was the pipe, sir?
12 inches.
And was the pipe active?
Yeah, yeah.
Active?
Yeah.
Who are
Put in
you?
water where?
Excuse me?
I'm sorry, who are you?
My name is Art Tully. I'm the village engineer.
You're the one who approved it. You want to show me where that pipe was on my property?
There was a pipe, I didn't approve anything.
Well, who approved it?
Who
There was
approved it?
an existing pipe, menacing trail at the point where the culvert is located,
Donna, I
is
need you to come up
the
here
low point
and help me.
in the area. All the water collects there and drains.
And now collects on my front property.
Do you know how much water
Is that correct,
is
sir?
on my property?
You want me to answer one question at a time, or?
No, not really.
Okay, that's fine.
I want this pipe taken out, okay? This is an environmental impact study was never done. You have no permits, there are no easements on my title. I want this pipe taken out, okay?
There was not an existing pipe that was working. That's the bottom line. Donna, I'd like Donna's...
This is my neighbor,
I'm a
who's
neighbor.
now also experiencing a problem with this because this water is going
Her
into
property.
other properties and into protected wetland streams which run behind. So now this water is going into those protected wetland streams, which are behind her property and mine as well. Mrs. Stikel will continue because she actually knows a lot more about this than I do. I wish if you would allow her to speak.
By all means.
Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for
Good evening.
taking the time to listen to me. I do appreciate it. I think what needs to be clear is...
We just have your name for the
Oh,
record.
absolutely. Donna Marie Stippo, and I'm in the town of Goshen, 44 Old Medicine Trail. These are my neighbors, as well as Janice Lutz. It's affecting all of our properties along Medicine Trail, given the volume of water that's coming through this culvert. And it will continue to flow simply because it's become the catch basin and I guess we're depositing it now in the front yard. And I think what really needs to be brought is some of the facts is that whatever was under the road was laid approximately 30 or 40 years ago, and that's what the gentleman at the village had told us. Not this gentleman, but Mr. Hickok. So whatever was under the road 30 or 40 years ago was a time frame in which this was farmland, and it wasn't the same density. We also had a change in zoning. We now have residential single-family homes there, which I'm sure most of us live in. And what's happened is to solve some of the problems of the water and the sewer issues that you're having here in the village, and I have plenty of friends here. I know what's going on, and I do feel for them. But to open up the road and to take up the pipe that was either non-functional for the better part of 15 years, and to simply now run it into the front yard of a single-family residential parcel, that's really not the answer. That water is draining from a number of streets, and as my neighbor had said, he mentioned some of the toxins that would be in this water. It doesn't belong on the front lawn of a property, and that's pretty much where we're at. Do you have a right to have a drain and move water? Absolutely. But it needs to move into another drain, and the town doesn't have one. We don't have sewer on that side. We have wells, and our wells are in our front lawns and as well as in our rear lawns. This water is coming into her property, and what's happening is that it's pushing through and filtrating into Janice's. Janice's entire driveway goes underwater now, and it's encroaching up. I do agree we had a tremendous amount of water, but any heavy rain and these conditions will repeat themselves. It then starts to move into my property, and my entire rear yard gets backed up. And it's moving down all of my other neighbors who have children and couldn't be here because of games, so I figured I would come for myself and my other neighbors on Old Ministing Trail. If, in fact, this pipe was something that was working at a time in the 1990s when the first subdivision was being done with respect to the farmland, it would have been evaluated under SECRA, simply because the amount of water that would be going onto these residential properties would either need to be redirected or looked at that point in time. It's something the village would have been involved in as an involved or interested agency, as well as when the town was doing the work in the county. And that doesn't appear to have happened because the pipe wasn't functioning. Whether it was blocked, whether something happened to the road, I'm unaware of the details. We just know some of the basics in that it went in approximately 30, 40 years ago. To say that it was simply replaced, these weren't existing conditions, so that becomes almost disingenuous in the sense that with something there, yes, but not functioning, but now we have a pipe that is collecting water, toxins, and any kind of sewer backup that's coming, and I believe there's a sewer station right there that bubbles up. So that is now going into this drain and being forced through. I mean, I'm not quite sure who did the calculations with respect to the flow of water and the amount of water that can go through that pipe. I mean, with the diameter and the size of it, we have a healthy amount of water coming on literally the front lawn. So if the pipe came over to the town side, it needs to go somewhere. You can't simply dump on the front lawn of a parcel, of a property. You know, yes, you do have a right to be in another right-of-way. That's clear. I mean, we're not saying that isn't something that you would have a right to do if you have something worked out with the town. But essentially, it would be as if someone took a pipe and just put water onto your property. And we're talking hundreds and gallons of water.
Every day. It's draining.
Continuously draining.
I have snapping turtles that are about 40 years old in my pond. I have geese, I have deer, I have mullets, I have everything on my property. I'm on 8 acres in the town of Goshen, and this water cannot filter onto my property without it being through a system. There's sewer water coming onto that wetland. I've already called the DEC, but I'm not zoned as a wetland per se. Behind me.
It's a beautiful ecosystem that's working on her property.
Okay.
I guess the fact that the pipe goes into water, it would be missed, it wouldn't cause an issue, but the bottom line is that regardless of whether it's a hill, an impervious surface, or gravel, it's the front yard of a residential single-family property. And I don't believe there's legal standing to just dump water or dump anything, garbage or sewage, anything onto someone's property.
Including our properties, the villages.
And not one of you would tolerate this pipe on your property.
No.
Not one of you.
Okay, if I can...
You got to understand how upset we are.
I think it's very clear from your presentation, all the points you guys have made, that this is something that is of great importance to you all and your neighbors. At this point, what we've been told by our staff and our professionals and consultants was that it was a replacement of a pipe. And we can only do what our staff professionals tell us. However, obviously, it's something that is very important to you guys, so what we can do, we'll discuss it again as a village body, I'll meet with my professionals, we'll take a second look to confirm that, but at this point, that's what I'm being told, and that's the only thing we can go on.
So it's going to be what they say and what we say, basically that there was an existing pipe that was underground for 15 years?
But regardless of whether it was underground or existing, your legal right to put water onto the town stops in the right-of-way. Just like the utility poles. I mean, I'm very well aware that there's a buffer with respect to, how much roadway and how much buffer. That road on Old Minnesink was redone when the subdivisions were done in the year 2000, 2001. And the builder was, part of his conditions of his approval was to actually make that road so that the buses would be able to run well, in addition to the fact that it allowed for line of sight with respect to the residential properties and the driveways that were coming onto a major roadway. You're outside your 10 feet, and even if you're in your 10 feet, your water actually has to stop. Explain to me, from an engineer's perspective then, how does water just stop at 10 feet? It doesn't. It's got to feed somewhere, and unfortunately, replacement or not, it's feeding directly into the front property. So we have now not just an environmental issue, and not just the fact that it's causing problems, but we have now a legal issue, in the sense that regardless of what you want to do with the pipe, the water can't go onto her property, and it should be bleeding through it. And I don't mean to be, I mean to be emphatic about the position, and I understand what you're being told, but there comes a moral obligation with respect to what you're doing with your water on the front lawn of a residential property. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, we all understand you need to put the water somewhere. But it can't be on her front lawn, my side lawn, my neighbor's front lawn, my rear yard. This is what's happening. But the pipe physically is in her property. So even if you cut the pipe and make it shorter and you're within your right-of-way, you don't have legal standing to just dump gallons of water on the front yard. And that's pretty much where we're coming from.
Sure, and I appreciate all that. And
I've spoken to Doug and I've spoken to the town, and I told them I'd be here. So if you wanted to reach out to them, I've had conversations with them. So the town's aware of this simply because I couldn't understand how this water was directed onto a private property like that, without any kind of...
And I can't wait 2 months for a decision to be made. This is critical.
Your assistance would be greatly appreciated, and if you could expedite some review, we would definitely appreciate that also.
I appreciate that. I appreciate you taking the time to come out tonight. I talk to the supervisor often, so I'll talk with him. I make it a point to never make promises on things until we do our internal discussions and all that, which I'm sure you can understand. So we'll discuss it again internally, and then whatever the result is, I can keep you guys
We need to have the water tested too. I mean, I don't know what's coming onto my property. I have sewer now coming from that pumping station onto my property.
And keep in mind we have wells.
Yes.
We have wells. So if there's contamination that's coming, we have a bigger problem. I mean, we don't want to be Chester and the DPW who dump salt and all those homes had those wells redone. I don't want that to be the town and the village of Goshen. To be proactive would be beneficial.
I understand.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Any further citizen comments or questions tonight? Yes, sir.
My name is Chris Levendos. I'm a former resident of Goshen. I was before the board last year seeking approval of the naming of the soccer field at Erie Street in memory of Harold Innocent. What I'd like to present to the board this evening for consideration, we had suggested at that time that we would return at a later date with a sign to represent that naming. So what I would just like to present to the board is the examples of depiction of what that sign would look like for consideration. So I'll just pass this around and I'll just have a few quick comments on it. Just to explain that.
Thank you.
Thanks. Yes, sir. The first picture that's here, just for the folks to see, this is the existing sign to the Erie Street Park area. This would, certainly in this consideration, we're not asking that this be removed or replaced. This is just for further purpose of what we're going to suggest for the innocent sign. The next item that's in there is just a simple layout of where that sign is positioned. You'll see in the lower left area is the fence line. There is an opening in the fence line, and it's just marked by an X. That existing sign that I showed in the previous picture, that's where it's approximately positioned. It sits in front of the playground area, which is then in front of the basketball courts. There's a fence that segments the playground area from the open field that's there. There is a cement structure that is on the other side of the fence, and we would suggest that the new sign, which is depicted in this design drawing here, would be positioned right in front of that structure, positioned in such a way certainly not to block any logical egress of people or equipment that would move onto the field. And as far as its color and theme and design, we would suggest that it would mimic the existing sign that's already there, so not to, be in any conflict with the general theme and layout of the park today, but the messaging would follow what is suggested there in the design. So we present that for consideration. The cost of the sign and the cost of the placement would be funded by former alumni of Goshen High School, so it would be no cost to the village. Thank you.
I think it looks great. What I would recommend that we do as a board is send this to Joint Rec and get their thoughts as well, because they maintain the parks in the town. Does anyone else have any comments?
Just the sign dimensions. That it fits the sign dimension parameters.
Yeah.
There are parameters that are established and that is fixed.
You're looking at the same dimensions as this?
The exact same dimensions.
So I'm sure it would conform.
Then I'm sure it will be
Yep.
fine.
Okay.
Okay, very good. What we'll do is we'll send over to the Joint Rec. When's the Joint Rec meeting?
I'll do the Joint Rec tomorrow night.
Thank you, sir.
So we should get a pretty fast turnaround. Do you have a ballpark time frame when you would be installing it or anything like that?
Saturday, September 24th, if that's possible.
Great, yeah.
Can you do me a favor, just write your contact information?
Yes, I will.
Here, so I can call you and let you know how it went with university.
Is the 24th after our next public meeting?
It's before. Next meeting is the 26th.
Well, just to cover our bases, if the board's in favor, why don't we make a motion to approve this pending Joint Rec's approval tomorrow night?
I'll just move it.
Just to expedite it so they can get it on time.
I don't think so.
Okay. Do we
I
all?
think they have to, my only,
Yeah,
saying they're doing a wonderful job, and that I just wasn't sure about the 48, the 48 inches. So if that fits the sign parameters.
Same sign
No,
there.
it's not.
Well, hopefully the sign,
But if it
when we
is
put this
terrific.
sign up, right, if we put this sign up, hopefully it's within our own rules.
But you said they would be funding it.
But you said, you said it was the same size as the
But
existing
it's
Erie Street
not.
Park?
Yes.
It's not?
No, it doesn't look like it. I'm not trying to be problematic.
Yeah,
I think what you're doing is fabulous.
That's
I
what I think.
support it,
Yeah.
absolutely. It should just be the same size.
Yeah, and that's, as I presented, the intention is supposed to mimic both the theme and the dimensions.
Fine.
So if there's some conflict, I'll make sure it's,
Great.
okay.
Are you going to have it tilted like the Erie Street sign? Is it gonna-
I just looked at it before I came here, it looked
Has it been
fairly...
straightened up? I know it's a lot.
Yeah,
I love
yes,
curve
I think
now.
it was straightened.
Dave, do you see any issue with us not voting to send it right to Joint Rec? I'd hate for these guys to get delayed just because of some snag or something.
Do I see any issues about it? I do.
So we don't need to prove it, we go right to Joint Rec and just we get to go?
Sure, if you want to prove it subject to Joint Rec, I mean,
Whatever you want.
I mean, I feel more comfortable if we should approve it.
Fine.
Just to cover all our bases. So,
Second.
all in favor, signify by saying aye. Pending Joint Rec.
Aye.
Thank you.
You're good? And we'll talk to Joint Rec.
Thank you.
And we're good.
I'm not sure.
Sir?
Yeah.
Can you just add your contact information so we can get back to you?
Sure will.
All right, further citizen comments? Yes, we'll do.
I'm Joanne Muldoon. I live on 138 Murray Avenue in the village of Goshen, and I just wanted to add my concern about the sanitary sewer and stormwater runoff from our end of the town. I observed walking around town, 4 of our sewers actually exuding wastewater. The one at Erie Street, where the old jail site was actually running perking water into the Rio Grande, which then runs under Erie Street and down to the middle of Goshen. There's another one between Murray Avenue and Montgomery Street. There is a brook, It drains the fields from the Hooker School. At one time, that was an ice pond up there, and it had been drained maybe 40 years ago when they worked on the Hooker School field, and that rainwater runs under Murray Avenue down through an open stream and also goes down to Erie Street. There are 2 sewers there that actually have sewer toilet paper that came out of them. The fourth one, I'm sorry, that would be the second one. The third one is down on Scotchtown Avenue at the bottom of the hill, close to the parking area for the county building. That also runs into the Erie Street sewer. The fourth one is down on Montgomery Street, closer to North Church Street. And these are all running down into the village of Goshen, along with the volume of water that was in that brook that I referred to from Montgomery Street to Montgomery and Murray Avenue. They meet down at Erie Street. And as I said, the Erie Street sewer was perking the water out of it, so that seems to be the problem that is backing up then. From there it backs up. We have had the 80 houses added into that sewer line from Harness Estates, and the drainage from Scotchtown Avenue is also tilted so that it's all coming down into that same area. Mike Nozzolese is aware of where this is coming from. I just wanted to make a comment about our concern.
I appreciate you very much coming down tonight. Did you? Sorry. Yes.
All right. I'm Roberta White. My brook is what she's talking about. However, the village has an easement on the front driveway of my house that goes from Murray Avenue to Montgomery Street. There are 3 manholes in there because of the sewer line. The manhole directly in front of my house looks like Mount Vesuvius. It is erupting all the time, and this is strictly raw sewage.
This is manhole on the street or on your property?
No, it's on my property. It's in my driveway, my front driveway. Now, after Irene, I called Mike. The guys came up, and they put down 2 loads of item 410 or whatever it is. Anyway, that was fine. But 2 days later, that all washed out. I now have ruts that are between 8 to 10 inches in my driveway. Up above, on Murray Avenue end of the driveway, it is also washed out ruts up there for the same reason. All the water is coming down Murray Avenue, right down. It doesn't go through blacktop, but it will go through dirt, and it's washed it right down. 3/4 of my driveway is now down in Montgomery Street. Now, I called again, and because nothing has been done since the second storm, I took 2 safety cones and put them out in front of the house, just in case, if I needed an ambulance. I'm 80 years old, anything could happen. They would come Murray Avenue way. They would get stuck because there's no place for them to go. I have entrance from the back of my house down to Montgomery Street. That's all right. But in the meantime, what's going to happen? And this is going on time after time after time. And I'm getting pretty disgusted about it. We never used to have this problem. The brook overflows, that's fine. I know where that's going. That's going right down to the Rio. That happens quite frequently. But this sewage business is really driving me crazy. Besides the smell, I don't think it's a very healthy atmosphere to have to put up with. And I've lived here for almost 62 years. So I think something should be done, and should be done now.
Thank you both very much for coming and expressing those concerns. First, I'm sorry that you had to deal with that problem recently, and that you've been dealing with it for a while, it sounds like. With that specific issue, I'll talk to Superintendent Nozzolese and see if there's anything that can be done for the short term.
Well, something has to be done. I'm having a meeting at my house Wednesday night. I've got cars that are going to be driving in. Well, I've got to make sure that they don't come down Murray Avenue, they've got to come up Montgomery Street. Because anybody that gets caught in that rut is going to ruin a tire, if not something worse.
But when I said that the immediate problem, I was meaning more of the sewer overflow there. The road, I mean, that should not be a difficult fix. That's something that I'll speak to Mike about tomorrow.
It's terrible.
Right. In terms of...
But I mean, there's toilet paper, it's condoms, it's everything. Floating. Now, that's not a very pleasant sight to look out your front door. they have to put up with.
Just to speak to that broadly, the sewer issue, I think that, it's something that we've been dealing with for the past number of years. We're at a point where the DEC is putting us under consent order to fix that problem. So we've been doing a study of all the sewer lines that we have. We fixed the line that's here on Erie Street that was going under the creek there. And that helped a little bit. We saw in lighter rain, large periods of rain like we experienced, and the problem
I realized it was an exceptional amount.
Right, but still,
everybody realizes that.
Right.
But it doesn't make me feel a damn bit better.
Of course. Just because it happens a lot less frequently doesn't make it less of a problem. I agree. Earlier tonight, we voted on putting a project out to bid, and we feel strongly that project is going to have a good impact on our sewer system. And essentially, and I'm not an engineer, so I can only speak in very layperson terms. We have a pipe that goes into the sewage treatment plant, and that goes directly into the plant, and that's fed by 3 pipes that are larger than that pipe. So we have a bottleneck that takes place outside the plant, and we're going to be replacing that smaller pipe with a larger one. And we believe that will cause less of a bottleneck, which will then have a less of an impact on the rest of the system. That's one thing that we're going to do among many that we're going to need to do. When a problem is ignored for an amount of time, there's no easy fix, unfortunately. But we think that's going to have a positive impact as soon as it's completed.
The other problem on Murray Avenue is the fact that the driveways, when the road was second built, there was not a lip at the top of the driveways to hold the water back. So it comes right down. It comes rushing down. It's like a river coming down. And of course, because I'm lower, all that water is coming down, and my back 40, I have 2.5 acres. My back 40 is literally underwater. I never used to have this, never. And I said, I've lived there a long time, and I've seen a lot of changes, but this is crazy.
Well, and that's why we're doing this study, because it's not like something changed inside of the system, so we're wondering if there could be some kind of blockage that might be making it worse in certain areas. So we're looking at all our options here. It is a significant problem, and we are committed to fixing it. It's costly. This year we have $500,000 budgeted to fix it, and we all know what the sewer rates are like already. We believe that $500,000 is going to go a long way, and we're committed to spending that every year until we have a substantial improvement to the situation. But it's a challenging thing, and I'm sorry that you've been dealing with it as long as you have. It's not appropriate for anyone to have to deal with it.
I don't feel I should have to go down on Montgomery Street and start shoveling that gravel back up in my driveway.
Sure.
Well, I'm 80. I'm not going to do it.
I understand. That's something that I'll talk to Ms. Mesley about tomorrow to see what can be done there, because it's, as you mentioned, the ambulance, things like that, there's a safety concern, and that takes precedent. So our number one responsibility as a village is to keep our residents safe.
Are there any FEMA funds available for infrastructure? Is this considered infrastructure?
Well, they approved the public aid FEMA last Monday for municipalities. Before that, they did it for individuals. Now it's for municipalities as well. They haven't started having those briefing meetings yet that I've been aware of. There'll be introductory meetings. Whatever we can find revenue for, we're gonna look into. Whether it's the RIO, dredging that, anything we could possibly get money for, we're going to look into. Based on conversations that I've had with reps in the past and just other municipal leaders, generally FEMA will only contribute funds to help a problem that was caused by the natural disaster that was identified. So if we could identify a place in our sewer infrastructure that had a substantial detriment to it because of Irene or the following storm, that might be a genesis for something, but just lack of repair over the years, they probably won't be able to help us. That being said, it's worth asking. I think our first priority is going to be the spillway to our dam, getting that replaced, because that's a large concern. But we're going to look for everything. We had losses at our DPW, the police, cars, everything. But infrastructure is on the forefront of all of our minds. So we're going to have those conversations, and any money that we can squeeze from FEMA, we will. So, thank you very much. Further citizen comments? Yes, sir.
Well, we're on the topic of sewage.
I'm Linda Shute.
Lyle Shute. We have a property on Wickham Avenue that, over the last 2 weeks, we had a problem with the sewer pipes coming from the street main back into the house, into the lower level, and flooded the lower apartment. It's a multi-family building. Hurricane Irene, that was an unprecedented event, so we understand that. Needless to say, the people that live down there, we had to move them out immediately. In fact, we started tearing the place apart as much as we could. We're taking action on our own, on our own expense to deal with this issue. I spoke to you about it the other day. Pete, I have a business right down the street from Pete's place. We live in Hamptonburg. We have a condition that we're scared that if another rain event occurs, that we're going to have another backflow into the house. Okay, we have 2 families living above, long-term, local people who've been there for close to 10 years. Okay, we maintain the property very precisely as if we lived there ourselves. We're asking for help. What should we do? What can we do? What can the village do? I can't have this potential for sewage inflow into the house going into the winter. That would mean everybody would have to be evacuated. Okay. I don't know if I have to dig up my pipes. I think they're probably old, but they've never had a problem before. But this clearly was an event where the flow was coming from the street main. It was Niagara Falls. It was blown out of the fixtures. Like you can't believe. Okay. The other thing I just comment on, because I think Pete mentioned it, the folks we have in that apartment, I wanted, and they were scared. We wanted to get them out. We weren't aware of any shelters that they could go to. In fact, I called the county emergency center to ask if there was some place I could have these people. They're older folks. Okay, they have nowhere to go.
So you wouldn't come to our...
We couldn't get to them because of the streets, and we said, look, call 911. Okay, this is a serious situation. And I called the county to see if there was any shelters set up in the area. They didn't know of any. I wish I had known, because I would have told them to go to the senior center.
Well, actually, the senior center, Red Cross volunteers were the ones that they housed there.
Oh, okay.
So it wasn't actually open to the public
okay, maybe that's what
as a shelter. We accommodated Red Cross, where they had workers that were scattered throughout the county that were performing Red Cross duties that stayed there because they had no place to stay.
Oh, I understand. Okay, so it wasn't really a shelter then, it was just for volunteers.
I can speak to that, then I'll talk to your former topic. In regard to shelters, that day, the county had shelters that they had opened up in Washingtonville and Deer Park. In the village, I was with the police chief the entire day and the DPW superintendent. We spoke to the schools, and we were ready to open up the intermediate school as a shelter if need be, so we had that manned and stationed.
Okay.
We didn't need to because there wasn't much of a need. I think we had about 8 people that we evacuated from New Street, and those people went to the one in Washingtonville.
Okay.
But when our police fielded phone calls, we responded to all that. The challenge that day, and you might have called the police, but the police phone lines, they were down. So the way we had to do it is we tried by putting on the website, routing people to the town of Goshen police, and they would radio us because we had lost phone lines. So it was a challenging. So if you did call the police, I apologize.
I think they called 911.
Okay.
I don't know what the
transaction was. It was a challenging day. Communication was tough because every other place didn't have phones.
Right.
In the future, the first thing, if you're local, try to call the village police, because sometimes they might have access to more information, like in this case that the county doesn't.
Okay.
If you have internet access, check the website. I put the village website, I put stuff on there, and the village has a Facebook page that I have information going on to. Obviously, a lot of people didn't have power, so it's not an ideal system.
Right.
But the town of Goshen was kind enough to route calls that they got for us through the telephone. So we had one station ready to be manned if need be, but the ones that the county and elsewhere were sufficient. a conversation that we're going to need to have as a board in the future is how to get mass amounts of information out to people during times of emergency.
Right.
We used to have a phone service called Nixle, where people would opt in, and when there was some kind of emergency or public information you had to get out, it would call people, but it was an opt-in, and a lot of people didn't opt in. And then the service started charging us to use it.
Oh.
So I think we had like maybe 30 people signed up, most of them staff. So we hadn't used that anymore. There's other pay-in services that we might need to discuss at this point. It's one of those things, you know, you look at the financial reality and say, is it worth to spend $5,000 a year on this service when we have all these other costs? 2 months ago, we probably would have said no. Maybe now it's time to have that conversation again, because you never know what's going to happen, as we know better now. In terms of the sewer issue, I mean, first, I'm sorry that you guys had to deal with that, live through that, and your tenants as well. You know, I spoke earlier about our general sewer strategy with our infrastructure repairs and studying. In regard to your specific situation, I believe as recent as today, the line on Wickham was TV'd. Did they get out there today?
Yes.
See that line?
Yeah, so they were out there.
Okay. Yeah, so they TV'd that line to investigate what could be the issue. Is it just sheer volume of water that's getting into the system? Is there a block in the line? Are there roots from a tree? So we're investigating that. I don't think we've gotten the report from the TVing yet. But as soon as we have that, if there is some kind of corrective action the village can take, we'll do so. But we don't know what the study is, and I don't want to, you know, speak too soon and say there's a fix that is immediate that we can do tomorrow, just because we don't know what the reports are going to say.
Yeah, no, I was happy to see the TV.
Yeah, well, it's
there. I did send a letter into the village. I don't know if it came in yet, if there was time to get it distributed. But I sent you a letter just
When did you put it in the mail?
Probably Friday, maybe. You have the letter?
Came in today. Okay.
Came in today, so anyway.
It's probably in my box right now.
I wanted to just kind of go over that, so the board would, you know, have the benefit of hearing that also. Some of the items we covered, I went through my insurance company and they told me, you're on your own. We don't cover that type of stuff.
I can speak to that briefly. So we've actually contacted our insurance company about sewer backups in the homes. So they're reviewing claims right now. And
okay.
They're going to let us know if it is in fact covered.
Okay, great.
So and I would, either I can follow up you, you can follow up me, and we can find out if it is covered. Hopefully it is. But as you know, because you've talked to your insurance carrier, it's challenging right now dealing with insurance.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. We filled out the hurricane form that was at the village hall.
Right. Yep.
So that came in with it also.
Okay.
We looked into FEMA. I'm going to go down, like you suggested, to the fire training.
Center. Yep.
And talk to them directly, but my understanding with them over the phone was that if it's not your primary residence, again, you're kind of on your own. Maybe there's some, loans you could take out if you want to do any kind of repairs.
Could your tenants be involved in the process? Would that change the equation?
I don't know. That's a touchy subject.
Yeah.
I mean, I mentioned it to them for sure, and I, gave them the information at the village hall for them to take action on if they wanted to.
Okay. That just seems bizarre. If you're the property or they would help you.
The owner property, I don't understand,
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe it's something to do with like a multifamily. I don't know. But it seemed like not too promising, okay?
Hopefully a conversation in person will prove more.
Yeah, I'll go down there, and talk to them face to face and see.
Okay.
We definitely experienced what this lady was talking about as far as manholes bubbling over. It definitely happened on North Church and Wickham. I mean, it was like just pouring out of there, so whatever the back pressure was up the line, it probably came down Wickham right into the house. So yeah, basically we wanted to come out to the village board to just say, look, we're trying to take some action because we want to protect our property from this happening again. If we get a snow melt, whatever. I don't know if the system can handle 2 inches of rain now, or if it can't handle any. I really don't know. But we're very sort of on edge. This happens again. We're taking steps now. We're going to start spending money to just stop. Clear out the whole lower level so that the other people can remain in the building. I'm very interested in the videotaping the sewer line and what happens, because they're going to look at some of the laterals, and if they find anything that needs to be corrected, we want to do it. We hope the village wants to do it.
Absolutely.
But this is major, and there's a couple houses on that street that people are going ballistic. So we're going to take the calm and cool route, but we want to get action.
Absolutely. On our end, we're doing everything that we can do legally. We have to work within the confines of the law and all that, but this is a priority for us, and we're as on top of it as we can be. So I would encourage you, I think I gave you my card, so you have my cell number.
Yes.
Don't hesitate to reach out if there's anything that I can do to help you guys outside of any of this.
Good. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, what's the property located on Woodland?
It's number 9, Art.
Are you next to,
It's 2 houses over.
are you here?
The corner house is O'Donnell?
O'Donnell's there? Are you-
Right next to O'Donnell.
You're right there?
Right.
Okay, all right, right
So
here.
now,
Yeah, it's O'Donnell.
yes, that's it right there, yeah, correct. Yep,
All right, thanks.
there you go. Okay, so that goes down that way.
Right.
Okay, great. All right.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. Any other citizen comments?
Seems like, sorry.
Go ahead, after you, Joel.
Go ahead.
After you. Yeah?
Please.
Okay.
Is any of the privately owned wells in the village, is there any possibility that they might have been contaminated by village sewage?
Art, can you speak to that?
Well, I don't know the answer. I don't know where the private wells are, and so.
Nothing's been brought to our attention, but...
I mean, even just, is there the possibility?
Well, we're certainly not going to speculate on that.
Was there any kind of advisory offered by the village to the citizenry of the village of Goshen in that regard?
I don't even know if there are any private.
Yeah, there are, but they're not used for consumption. They're used
Oh, there
for
are.
watering, as far as I'm aware.
There are wells that are used for consumption in the village.
Would that be the case?
Well, I'm not aware of that, so that's
Nothing
new
versus-
information to me. I know of some houses that have wells that they don't use. I used to have them.
Well, it is a matter of public record in the water and sewer detail here in the village hall, right? So, anyway, I would hope in the future that if something like this ever happens again, that the village will perhaps consider advising its citizenry that if they have wells, that there may or may, if there is a possibility for contamination, that they be advised. Let's see here. Next thing is, gosh, I really didn't have an opportunity to get out. I did a short tour of the village, and I observed 18 sites where village sewage was leaking onto the streets, onto private properties, into the Rio Grande, into other creeks. And one of the things that I observed that was terribly disturbing to me was children playing in the streets days after the storms, when there was still sewage coming up in the streets. Kids playing in the streets, kickball, soccer, picking up the ball, throwing it, touching their mouths, putting their fingers in their mouths, in their eyes. I'm just thinking to myself, the possible ramifications of that. And that's not to mention people driving through it and bringing it home into their driveways, or their pets walking through it. I've observed right over here, Harold Innocent Field, kids and parents coming in and out of there, walking through it, getting splashed by it by passing cars. All over the village I observed this. After the storm, children out in the streets playing in it. And in no particular place did I observe any kind of a warning. There was no sign advising citizens or children or anybody as to the health consequences of being exposed to that. And I understand that the village was working really hard and stretched real thin. And this is a constructive criticism. I'm just saying in the future, I think, in my opinion, it would be advisable to post advisories at these sites. Wherever there's a sewer that's breaching, put a sign up. Biohazard. You probably get them from the hospital for free. They're just little biohazard signs or something in English and Spanish. I observed both, some people didn't speak English. They were Spanish-speaking people. My Spanish isn't so good. I tried to talk to them a bit, but they didn't seem to understand what was going on. Their kids are playing in it. Gosh, if I had kids, I would be very alarmed over that. And so, just the constructive criticism, word of advice, 20/20 hindsight, right? But I'd say in the future, it would be prudent maybe to put up some signs at these sites, just, warning signs, advisories. And the next item that I'd like to address is, gosh, I've been coming to these meetings pretty consistently through 3 mayoral administrations, Weinberger, Higgins, and now Mayor Roddy. And just about every single meeting that I've been to, Citizen Markowitz has come to just about every single meeting. And like a canary in a coal mine, you know, just banging that drum over and over again. What are you doing about the Rio Grande between Finance Pond over to the post office, that stretch of the Rio Grande, or any of it for that matter? You know, he was constantly at just about every single meeting I've ever been to, you know, asking that question, bringing it up, and warning the village boards that something like what just happened during Katrina and the subsequent storm is going to happen, that whole area down there is going to get flooded. And granted, he's, you know, he may not have any credentials, he's not an engineer or a hydrologist, but he was repeatedly bringing this up, and it astounds me that he was so ignored that the village just kind of said, well, you know, we'll look into the matter, and then, well, anyway, you know, kudos to Joel for observing it, and it's a shame he wasn't in a position that he might have been able to do something about it. But, you know, there must have been at least 50 properties that were affected down there. You know, one of them moved into our building downtown, you know, just as a, you know, they had no place to go. It was an emergency situation, so we let them come in and store their stuff there, and they're staying for a bit. And, you know, I just drive through there, and it's, I guess it's kind of like Goshen's version of New Orleans, but to me, it just seems like it was preventable. Here was a guy who was coming to every single board meeting, and mentioning it over and over and over again. What's that?
How was it preventable?
Well, Joel was bringing this to the attention of the village board, Weinberger, Higgins, this board, that Rio Grande was constricted in multiple areas. I mean, I'll let him speak for himself. You know, I'm sure he'd be willing to tell you. But, you know, just a few times that I went out with him and looked at it, you know, we observed where there was just, you know, the level of the Rio was so shallow, you know, from silt or branches and, you know, debris, bicycles and stuff that were in the Rio Grande. And I'm not sure, you know, where that might have blocked up or what was going on. My observation was when I went out there, Greenwich Avenue was flooded, all those businesses were flooded. And then I went out to the post office, and the water level at the post office was lower than it was over at Greenwich Avenue. And then it just reeked like fuel oil and gasoline, and, you know, who knows what else got in there. You know, I'm not saying, you know, I don't know what you might have done, but here's
I do.
You know, it's just, it's an observation. I was acutely aware of this because of him coming to meetings all the time and mentioning this. I don't know if anything could have been done or not, but he was the canary in the coal mine.
I'll have something to fill in on it.
Yeah, I'll let him speak for himself. But anyway, gosh, it's good to be back. I missed all of you, and just because I come and rattle a saber or maybe complain sometimes, it doesn't mean I don't like you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other citizen comments?
Well, with that, I do have something to say. And it is true that for the last 10 years, I've been talking to anybody who will listen to me about the laking of the 100-acre Old Mile tract and the blockage of the Rio. The two are interconnected. Not so long ago, Mr. Tully and I had an exchange about the drainage of the South Church Street area, running that water over into Finance Pond or the Rio Connect there. And I said at the time that, to my thinking, that was nuts to take water and put it back into an area that's not draining it in the first place and is causing flooding and is responsible for this community block development grant that is supposed to deal with it. But really, there's no way to address it without dealing in a whole systems way. So, first of all, I'd like to say to this board, and I don't single out this board because I have been pounding this drum for 10 years, can you hear me now? This was not a bad storm in the geological sense. Yes, we had a lot of water for the short-term history. We've had other hurricanes in this town before.
I'm just going to ask you, don't say it's not a bad storm.
I didn't say that.
We had people that had their homes destroyed.
I did not say this was not a bad storm. I said this was not a bad storm in the historical time frame.
We've had major storms in 1950, 1955. In the last 10 years, Greenwich Avenue has flooded, I believe, 4 times. This is not a first, and I guarantee you tonight, this will happen again. It will happen again because the source of the flooding is not so much that we had a high influx of water as that there is no place for it to go. The 100-acre-mile tract, which used to be a hydrological sponge, a buffer area that protected the downtown area of Goshen, no longer absorbs water. As Trustee Stewart pointed out, it has turned into a lake. He was shocked when he realized how flooded it was. Now, I went out and I photographed that area before the storm and after. And for some reason, as much water as we've had this year, the water had actually dropped in that area. It was still wet, it was still flooded, but rather than being mirror finished, the waterland plants had grown up so there was green on the top, there was foliage. After the storm, it was back to being a lake again. There was no place for the water to go. And on the Friday night, when I checked the area of the mile track, I went around to Finance Pond before the storm, and at that point, the spillway was still more than 2 feet underwater. And I can say that it was more than 2 feet underwater because I've been watching that spillway for the last 3 or 4 years and gauging it through dry periods and wet periods. And even in dry periods at the end of last summer, that spillway was 2 feet underwater. And I know it was at least 2 feet underwater because there was a guy fishing who was in the water. I asked him if he was standing on land or on the spillway. He said no, he was standing on ground. He walked over and stood on the spillway, and the water was up to his knees. So that was a gauge of the depth of the spillway.
Now, Trustee Matthews is making faces and gesturing.
I'm just saying, what is your point?
My point is that there's no place for the water to go, and if you don't show vision as a board and take hold of the horns of this dilemma and do something proactively in terms of dredging the Rio, in terms of approaching the landowner and getting involved with perhaps the Army Corps and the DEC to drain that 100 acres out there, there's a blockage. As Mr. Hickok just pointed out, clearly, it's evident to anybody looking at the situation. The Rio is blocked between Finance Pond and the post office. Once it clears the post office, it's flowing. There's even room, once it clears, for it to rise. But the water coming in from the east branch of the Rio was up to the top of the culverts a day or two after the flooding. It was still up to the top of the culverts. There was no place for it to go. The blockage seems to be in that bend between the old Conklin's lumber yard, the coal yard, and Greenberg's, where the old Greenberg's, or as you know, Markers, where it goes into the basement. There's not enough capacity going through there for that channel to take all the water that's being fed to it, and there's not enough capacity in the buffer area to absorb water when we have these historical storms. I guarantee you this is going to happen again, because that area used to be dredged, going back to when the Hamiltonian was run there, used to be dredged annually. The track is built on an area that had drainage canals built into it. The track itself was raised. Those canals are no longer being dredged. Plus you've got beaver and muskrat. That area can no longer absorb the water that comes down from the Goshen Hills, and coming in on the east branch, you've got the half-mile track flooding to Erie Street because there's no place for the water to go to that branch of the Rio because it's backed up. It's very simple. I mean, water is not rocket science. It speaks its own level. And there clearly are blockages. The board needs to show some vision, not simply sit and deal with problems as they arise. If you don't deal with this, it's going to happen again, no question about it. I'll be back here making the point again.
Well, I appreciate your comments. I just want to be clear that this board is not opposed to it. In fact, we are in favor of any type of constructive criticism that can be provided, because we're 5 individuals, so I appreciate the insights you can give.
I said I'm not singling out this board. It's the administration.
Right, but I'm saying, you know, I think that it's healthy to have those conversations. At the same time, you put a lot of information out there that, you know, me not being an engineer, I don't know how much is fact, how much is speculation and all that. But what I can tell you is we are evaluating the situation that Irene caused. We're looking at causes, what can be done to improve the situation, what can be done to look at a decreasing potential flooding and all that. We're looking at the RIO.
And already have.
Correct. And those conversations have been had in the past. Obviously, I think, you know, we need to continue to have those conversations. But we are not...
It would be a good first start for a grant writer.
Okay.
We already have a grant coming in to deal with some of the issues that we have.
So we're going to continue to monitor those things, to look into things, to look for solutions. All right. And I appreciate you saying that, and I know you'll say it again. So I appreciate your fervor.
If I can just add one thing to this, because I think it's really critical. I went out to photograph the flooding. Both floods, both the Irene flood and the flood from the storm that followed. And it really struck me as I was looking at the photographs, not so much in real time, but when I went to look at the photographs, it struck me how shabby that stretch of Greenwich Avenue is, and that's the core part of the village. And
You're referring to the state road?
I'm referring to the state road, Greenwich Avenue there,
As you all know, we can't maintain the state road.
And New Street, and that whole corridor, that whole part of the core village. And it struck me, as I was looking at the photographs, why this is. I mean, I've known it intellectually, but it was just very powerful when I saw the images. Nobody in their right mind is going to make the investment to build something of quality, something that's outstanding. Nobody's going to put $10 or $20 million into an investment when basic infrastructure has not been dealt with.
People just invested on that street. People have businesses on that street. People live on that street. And I think I appreciate your zeal.
Paul Healy can't give his property away.
I appreciate your zeal. And I listen to you when you speak, but I think you're going on too far.
Well, I'm still speaking. If you don't mind, this is privilege of the floor, and I'd like to finish what I'm saying.
Go right ahead, Joel.
You
Go right ahead.
address what I'm
going to ask for some order. Finish your point.
Yes. Paul Healy has not been able to give his property away. Paul Healy lost 2 or 3 dozen cars, as you're probably aware, even though they had been moved to the front. Paul Healy's property, which abuts the old drainage area for the mile tract, had flooding come further forward than it, I believe, ever has before, because again, there was no place for the water to go. Now, that property is the prime developable piece of commercial property in the core village, and nobody has shown interest in it, because in large part of the problems that obtain in the core village. And this became very evident to me as I was looking at the images. You are not only losing the value of the 100 acres as a rateable, you're losing a terrific amount of money there. It has gone from $2.5 million assessment to less than $500,000 on the mile tract. You are losing assessed value for every contiguous piece of property that touches it. Paul Healy's property, I believe, went on the market for $4 million, and he can't give it away.
What I would offer, I would love to see Greenwich Avenue repaved. As a state road, we can't touch it.
I'm not talking about the repaving.
I understand, but if you're saying, you know, there's multiple issues there, I thought you were referring to the road quality being poor.
No, I'm talking about the drainage problem, which is causing the flooding there, which certainly is driving the assessed base into the ground, no pun intended.
All right. Any further comments, Mr. Markowitz?
Motion to adjourn.
May I just ask one quick question?
Yeah, yes.
Was there any determination as to what might have been going on underneath or in the RIO? Let's say from Finance Pond to...
We're still investigating.
Yeah.
We think it has something to do with the 11 inches of rainwater.
Naturally. Yeah, but was there any obstruction observed or a collapse within that canal or...
We're continuing to investigate. I don't want to speculate and misspeak.
Gotcha.
I mean, you guys, Joe, I mean, you and Neil, you both were here. I mean, same as others. First off, the month of August, we got record rainfall throughout the whole month. So the ground was already saturated well in advance of Irene, the storm coming through. And then I've lived here, I've been in Goshen 52 years. I've never seen the amount of rain that we got in a short period of time that we got there ever in my life.
There was no place for it to go.
Well, we understand that, but there was no place for it to go, Joe, in Washingtonville, in Chester, in Montgomery.
We're talking about Goshen.
In Middletown, but there was no place for it to go in Orange County. Everybody got flooded.
Or New Jersey,
Everybody
or
got
Pennsylvania.
flooded. I mean, you know, we weren't the only ones.
I'm sorry, I don't want to walk out on you.
All in favor of adjournment, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much, everyone. Well, you said no, we would have.
Pretty much. He can stay. I mean, you know, you got to look at it in the same context. I mean, to me, every municipality in Orange County got flooded. Nobody got spared. Port Jervis, Washingtonville, whatever. There's people.
Doesn't change the fact that there's no place for it to go to.
Well, we understand that, Joe, but I'm just saying that I mean,